Hi, this is Doug Reif with BMC Technical Support. This video will help you troubleshoot ARSystem performance issues when logging has not been enabled. ARSystem performance problems are often dealt with by enabling logs, reproducing the scenario that causes the performance issue, or waiting for the problem to occur. Gather the logs and send them to support, and then either you or support will analyze the logs, make recommendations, and you will test those recommendations. But for those times in which a problem occurred, but you have not enabled logs, what can you do? Well, you can use the logs and diagnostic information that is always available in ARSystem. This includes always-on logging, server statistics, longest running API in SQL, and the AR exception log. I'll start by showing you the always-on logging feature. I'm currently in the ARSystem Administration Console screen, and I'll click on System, General, Server Information. Now let's click on the Always On Logging tab. AR Server automatically stores in memory all SQL, API, filter, and other activities. It will retain the most recent 5 megabytes of logging information by default. You can set that to a higher value by increasing the buffer size. In order to see that information, you will need to click on the Save to File button so that it writes out to a file specified in the file name field. We can click on the View button and we'll see all the information just like you would expect to see in a typical SQL, filter, or API log. This always-on logging is very useful since without enabling any logging, you have all the most recent activities available to you. You can use always-on logging for performance troubleshooting in the same way that you would use SQL, API, and filter logging if you had been able to turn them on before the problem occurred. Now let's look at the server statistics feature. I'm going to select the Server Statistics tab. The lower section is dedicated to tracking long-running APIs and SQL statements. By default, AR Server will store in memory the 20 most recent APIs and SQLs that took longer than 5 seconds to run. You can change the minimum duration and the number of saved operations. In order to view these long-running activities, I can click on these 4 buttons. This will cause AR Server to save the longest completed API calls, the longest completed SQL statements, unfinished API calls, and unfinished SQL statements to 2 remedy forms. The longest and unfinished API calls get written to the Server Statistics Longest APIs form. Let's take a quick look at what was being written there. You can see that AR Server collected important information such as the API call, the elapsed time, the username, client type, and the form name. So you can see from this example that the demo user performed a getList entry with fields API call, which is a standard query, against the time entry form, and it took 14.5 seconds to run. The longest and unfinished SQL statements get written to the Server Statistics Longest SQLs form. This form contains the API call that triggered the SQL, the elapsed time, username, and the exact SQL statement. And here you can see demo doing a query that took almost 9 seconds. Of course, this information can be very useful when troubleshooting a performance issue if you had not enabled logs. But even if you did enable logs, it's a very easy tool to identify recent long-running activities. There's one other option here that is worth noting. If you select the Enable Exception Logging box, every time AR Server identifies an activity that surpasses the minimum elapsed time threshold, it will also write that information to a log file called AR Exception Log. In fact, this is the last feature that I want to share with you today. The AR Exception Log is a file that is automatically created by AR Server and found in the DB directory right next to the AR error log. Since I enabled the exception logging option in Server Statistics, I will see any statements that were longer than the minimum elapsed time. I will see exactly how long the operation took, as well as detailed information about each operation. The AR exception log also contains information about every client API call that took too long and timed out. This will contain the SQL statement, API call, and other detailed information about the request. With these 3 features, Even without being able to plan ahead and enable logging, you get plenty of information to help you troubleshoot performance issues. I hope you found this video to be useful. Thank you for watching.